Are you working on your most important relationship, the relationship with yourself? Everyone, my name is Diana Garcia. I'm a licensed therapist in Florida. In today's video, I'm going to go through 6 tips to work on your relationship with yourself. Because let's be honest, the relationship with yourself is the longest relationship you'll ever have. And honestly, I think the most important relationship. The first tip that I have is really spend some time getting to know yourself. So the importance of nurturing a relationship with yourself where you understand your likes, your dislikes, your values, what do you want out of life, your passions, because let's be honest, one, that can change throughout life, but the truth is that's really going to inform the way you show up in different areas of your life. So if you know what type of values you value in yourself, it's going to help you understand what values you want in a relationship as a parent, as a child. And so again, it's important to really spend time to dedicate and get to know yourself and be curious about that. Right? So have a playful attitude of, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Did you think you'd be at this point in your life and be doing this? Are there certain things about your life that you find aren't really exciting or feel fulfilling? Great. So just spend some time to really nurture that relationship with yourself and get to know yourself a little bit better. Tip number 2 is really focusing on self-acceptance. And so what I mean is really nurturing a relationship with yourself where you can really accept and hold space for all the different parts of yourself, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean that we all have things about ourselves that we like and enjoy and are proud of, but it's also acknowledging that there's parts of ourselves that maybe we don't like, or maybe a little bit more painful or difficult to look at. But can we really shift and have a relationship with these parts of ourselves that's really based in self-acceptance and self-love and self-compassion? Because the truth is that they're also part of ourselves. That doesn't mean that we have to allow them to dictate the way we show up in our lives or relationships, that we can change the relationship we have with them so that then we really remove their power per se. And so when I talk about self-acceptance, I also talk a lot about kind of leaning into more self-compassion, right? So I'd encourage you to check out this video to learn more about self-compassion. But really what I mean by that, it's changing the way that you talk to yourself, the way you treat yourself, really acknowledging if there are certain parts of yourself, your history, your past that are really painful. So maybe some inner child wounds that you need to work through. And can you start to give yourself the own nurturance and love that maybe you didn't receive in different points of your life? And that's a process, right? So it's not a one and done. It's a process to really shift this relationship that you have with yourself. Hit like now to let me know that you're going to focus on self-acceptance, self-love, and self-compassion. Hit that like button now to make that commitment to yourself. Okay, the next tip is really about knowing your patterns and your history. So this is more a little bit not just knowing yourself, but understand maybe based on your upbringing, your childhood, your important relationships, your attachment history, past relationships, how that's really showing up. Maybe there's certain patterns that you've picked up on that are no longer helpful or at some point were serving you but don't serve you anymore. And so when I say that, that might be doing a little bit more of your individual work, doing some therapy, kind of exploring the relationships that you had with your parents when you were growing up, whatever the case is, or the way that you see relationships, the way you see yourself in a relationship, what tends to be your go-to move. Are you someone that tends to really avoid relationships or avoid kind of being close and vulnerable in a relationship because you never learned that that was safe? Or do you tend to really kind of pursue relationships and anxiously cling on to relationships, but at times that means that you push people away? Or maybe you cling on to relationships that really aren't going to meet your needs. Again, it can be very distinct and unique to yourself. So what I'm saying with this tip is really understand your patterns and understand if there's any history that's really kind of contributing to these patterns so that you can start to work through those places. Because the truth is, if they're going to continue showing up in your life in a way that's no longer helpful, then you need to understand what you need to move through in order to change those patterns. Tip is really about embracing being able to be alone. And I say that both in terms of relationship, being comfortable being single, but I also mean even if you are in a relationship, embracing kind of having your own time, your own hobbies, being able to go to the movies by yourself, travel by yourself. And I know this is really uncomfortable. I know because really I think there's a lot of focus on being in relationship or connections or being with friends. And I think that's important, absolutely. But I also think that it's important for you to be be comfortable to be alone, right? And so I know this was something that was kind of hard for me because that just wasn't something that I was taught or shown. And so I think when I got out of grad school, I made it a point. I had a trip plan, but it shifted. I was supposed to go with someone, but I decided that I still wanted to go on this trip. So I booked a trip by myself. I did join a tour group eventually, but I did the most of the trip like I was on my own. And I do recall feeling a little nervous and scared, like, am I going to be able to do this by myself? And I also felt afterwards really proud. I had a great time. I had fun. I made connections with new people. And because I think I was alone, it kind of forced me to go outside of my comfort zone a little bit. But I also really appreciated that I had that sense of confidence afterwards that I could do that and then I could have fun. And so again, maybe that's not what your goal is, having a trip on your own, but really kind of thinking about, is there ways that you can embrace the solitude? Because if you can't be alone, either in like romantically or just by yourself, that could then mean that you stay in relationships or you cling in relationships with people just to avoid your own company. And the truth is, like, you want to get to the point where you like your own company. This next tip is focused on practicing self-care. I know that's so cliche, but that's the truth, right? The reality is that we need to really focus on the things that are going to keep us going, right? That we're not constantly running on zero. So whatever that looks like for you, but really going back to the basics, your sleep, movement, nutrition, again, health stuff. Your relationships with others, your spirituality, financial, right? Because there's an element of self-care financially as well. So again, I'd encourage you to think about, like, are you prioritizing self-care? Because when I think about the relationship with yourself, it's not just kind of shifting the way you react to yourself, but it's also being really clear, like, are your behaviors showing that you're really taking care of yourself and that you love yourself? Just like you'd encourage a loved one to, make sure they're on top of their doctor's appointments, or again, making sure they're like moving their body. You should also really prioritize that for yourself, because we all know the impacts of like the basics in terms of just overall well-being. The last tip is really about acknowledging kind of some goals for yourself. And when I say goals, I mean, like, this goes back to identifying your patterns, knowing yourself, but really thinking about, again, we all have areas of growth. So thinking about, are there certain goals for yourself that you want to focus on? Are there certain patterns you want to change? Are there certain ways that you want to change in terms of how you show up for yourself, a self-care goal, how you show up in a relationship based on your relationship with yourself? So setting kind of micro mini goals for yourself so that you can have a very clear sense of like what you're working towards and what are kind of the actions you're doing to work on those goals, right? And I'm not really focused so much on like a rigid outcome, right? Not letting perfectionism show up, but more of like enjoying the process, right? And enjoying the process of, the truth is, you're never going to stop working on your relationship with yourself. It's not like you're going to arrive, right? That's going to be an ongoing value, whatever that looks like for you. And it might change, right? Your relationship with yourself and what kind of nurturing that relationship with yourself looks like now might be different in 5 or 10 years, or depending on what's going on in your life. But I really want to talk about just a last point. It's that it's important to still prioritize your relationship with yourself. I see so many people that tend to lose themselves, whether in a career, a family, having kids, just all these other areas in your life, that then you start to kind of lose this relationship with yourself, and you start to like not prioritize spending time with yourself, knowing yourself, dedicating time to yourself. And I think that's really a disservice. So just kind of keep that in mind. Comments below, which of these different tips do you think you really need to prioritize the most? Which is the one that really resonated with you? Which is the one that you're like, yep, that's the one that I probably really need to focus on? This video was helpful for you as you start to work or continue to work on your relationship with yourself. Like I said, lifelong journey, so it's not a one and done, but it's helpful to really incorporate these tips in your life moving forward. And as always, I encourage you to continue nurturing your mind, body, and soul, whatever that looks like for you.